This is day 4 of the November 89 7-day retreat in Springwater. Since it has come up in so many meetings up till now, we will talk about fear today. And not just talk about it, but will it be possible to look at it deeply? As it arises and as it affects us, all of us, human beings, and has affected all human beings. Maybe ever since we've been around. Affects us personally and our relationship with each other. In a small circle or globally. To list all the fears would take forever, probably. And yet we will list some. We'll go through naming some of the most common fears that affect us, arise in us and propel us. There is fear of loneliness, fear of people, fear of the future, what it will bring. Fear of sickness, getting this or that disease, fear of AIDS, fear of aging, fear of dying. There's fear of not being successful, of being a failure or becoming a failure, not working out at something. Fear of losing someone's affection or love. Fear of losing someone. Close to one, someone one is attached to or dependent upon. Fear of being left by that person, abandoned. One finds oneself in an airplane, one may be afraid of crashing, afraid of height, afraid of crossing a street or going into an elevator. Fear of not doing well and fear of doing wrong, fear of having done wrong or doing wrong potentially at any moment. Fear of the consequences of that. Fear of the power of another person over one. The wrath of someone. Fear of the wrath of another person, a person powerful in one's life. Fear of God, the wrath of God. Fear of punishment, being found out to have done wrong. Fear of being punished by people or being punished by God, going to hell, Christian hell or Buddhist hell, or whatever hell has been invented by the mind. It's not hellish enough in this life. We invent a hell to go to later on. Not just hell. I just read in a journal, a Buddhist journal. There are other undesirable, painful realms we can be born into beside hell. If we don't act right in this life. And we know we don't act right all the time. Maybe not right most of the time. So there's fear of what the consequences will be. Fear of inattention. But realize it really comes down to not being attentive. Then there's fear of being inattentive. What I will do while I'm inattentive. I wonder how Californians feel right now in the designated high danger earthquake areas that have been mapped and put in color on maps. One area is called 80 to 100% of a major earthquake. Right after a whole series of earthquakes. Is there fear of the big one? Reported that an earthquake is like nothing one has experienced before. Really nothing solid anymore to stand on, to hold on to. Everything shaking or crumbling. We may have gone through it and come through alive, but then is there fear this will come again? This will repeat itself, maybe worse. Maybe that time I won't get away with being alive. With so many fears moving us, aching us, haunting us. If we're at all sensitive to it, we may have numbed, the mind and body may have numbed itself to even feel the fear. But sitting quietly or turning inward with attention, awareness, listening, the numbness may give way to a growing sensitivity to formerly repressed things, dulled feelings. With so much fear in our body and mind, maybe just arising all of a sudden, one has lived on an even keel and suddenly something happens to one's children or grandchildren. And the fear, how will it work out for them? Children separating. How will it be for the grandchild? Suddenly this fear, this haunting fear, there would be tremendous problems, tremendous pain. One doesn't even think it all out as fear at the thought of what will happen. what will one do with this? What is one doing with this? With all of this fear that comes at an instant of thinking. An instant of thinking about having done wrong, or doing wrong again, of getting ill, of coming to an end at the end of one's life, fear of the unknown, maybe in a retreat, while sitting, coming upon a state in which there is no knowing, an absence of something to hold on to, no thought of me, and then the thought, what is going to happen to me now? When I'm nothing. How does one meet that? That state of body-mind which we label fear, anxiety, anguish. We may have met it in many different ways. I mentioned repression, shutting down feelings altogether, or taking to all kinds of escapes, drugs, or drugging substances, entertainment, or throwing oneself into work, relationship, whatever. But in the absence of that, I think the question is coming up with many people. In the absence of all escapes, one has put oneself into a situation here, one has taken time off to meet what comes up in a quiet, non-doing environment. How will I meet this thing? How do I meet it when it comes up? And the way the question is put is as though there was an I meeting something that is happening to it. How can we put it as undualistic as possible? Because at the moment of fear arising, that's what I am. There's no separate sufferer for this fear, of this fear. There's only what is going on in this body-mind. All the thought impulses, all the impulses in the glands and nervous system and organs and muscles. The imbalance of the system, pouring out responses, reactions, chemicals, which is felt as being highly uncomfortable, discomforting, painful, something one does not want to feel. It's an immediate reaction, as immediate as the fear reaction is to a fearful thought or memory, so immediate is the reaction to this sensation now that it's undesirable, bad, I don't want to feel that. Oh no, sort of a general response. No, not that again. But being here, sitting quietly, motionlessly, can a fresh interest be kindled? Or wake up, a fresh interest to really touch all of that, be in touch with it, not separate from it. Be, if one will put it this way, be inundated by it, with awareness. Not armed with any technique, no method. No prayer for someone else to step in and help. Just what is this? Is it humanly possible to face hell in oneself completely unarmed, undefended, unequipped with technique? The doer being at a loss of what to do. They're just being whatever is that the body is performing, triggered by thought and memory of something dangerous, frightening. It is humanly possible to do that. Someone is saying that. It's possible to, without any defense whatsoever, be in the midst of what has been triggered. One may or may not have been aware of the thought that started it all out, or the memory, the reminder. A reminder of a thought kind of seeing something. Because in past painful or dangerous situations, whatever was around visually or auditorily, sensate, whatever was around that incident can trigger memory of that incident. The brain functions that way, in association. May not realize why has the sight of this triggered this fear. Or one may not even realize that a sight, a visual stimulation has triggered it, but here it is, the body in full uproar, signaling danger. A stimulus, a memory, a thought about something frightening, triggering the body to manifest all of these symptoms which are felt as fear or anxiety and anguish. And then these very symptoms, these very feelings and sensations, signaling to the brain that there's something to be afraid of. And keeping the brain going, scanning for what may be dangerous. And there's plenty of things to think about that are dangerous or could happen to me. Or if one has not lost the thread of what triggered it, then continuing with those thoughts of what may happen to me. And the continuation of thoughts keeping the body in uproar, in pain, or whatever, however one wants to describe this indescribable sensation of anxiety. Maybe a little bit different for each particular organism. Has its particular points where it reacts most or quickest. But usually the whole body is involved or gets involved in it. Can one give attention to that, to what is going on, even though the immediate response is escape, get away from this. Shut it down. Do something else. Drown it. And yet there it is. It's in motion. And it is possible to be with it. Not as someone separate, but for there to be awareness, an inward-outward listening, feeling, seeing of what is going on without labeling it, without knowing it, not knowing it, and therefore not the separation of knowledge about it. Is that the first step in meeting fear? That which has been triggered, aroused, set into motion, to feel it, look at it, listen to it, without taking any kind of action. Actually, the listening without separation, without distance, or the looking without shielding oneself or protecting oneself. That is action. It's action of a completely different kind of our normal reacting to things. Everything else we do is reaction from memory, from past knowledge, from having learned methods and techniques. And from that we react. But with that there's inevitably separation. If any of this is not clear, you don't agree, you don't see it this way, please bring it up in meetings. We'll go into it any amount of times. It's always a fresh start. Just as right now, looking at it is a fresh start. It's not yesterday's looking. So, is it possible for the mind to be so quiet, for the body-mind in the midst of turmoil, in the midst of earthquake and hurricane, to be so quiet, aware, quietly aware? Quiet meaning not withdrawing or bracing against it. The bracing or withdrawing itself coming into awareness as part of this tumultuousness. It's a marvelous thing to discover one has braced against something or withdrawn. And in the discovery of that, not needing to continue with that, the separation breaking down in this awareness of bracing or withdrawing or doing some kind of a thing, not to feel this. Whatever is there is actively at work inside this marvelous organism, which can get into full action at the drop of one thought. It's quite clear, isn't it, that in this unconditional being there as whatever one is at that moment, there's no judgment. Judgment is condition. This is good, this is bad. And it's immediately a separation that can be felt. Can be directly felt when it takes place. Hoping for relief or a result, even though we're not saying this is bad or wrong, but that movement of thought, feeling, of hoping, wanting a result, is again not being there completely. Being there completely is the coming to an end of thinking about it in any which way, and realizing that every thought about it is a withdrawal or a bracing or a separation. Thought comes up, as it does out of ancient habit as thought thinks itself as the only tool of solving problems. That's why it kicks into action, thinks a thing over and over and over and over and over again, running in loops. But it cannot resolve what it itself creates, which is fear and anxiety. The resolution or dissolution, if there is any, cannot happen through thought or thinking about things in new ways. It's still a separating activity. Separate and separating, fragmentary and fragmenting activity. So we're asking in all openness and freshness, not coming from memory, from formulation, formula or recipe. Can there be an unconditional awareness of whatever pain may rack this body-mind, discomfort? And it may take this quiet sitting with it, sitting in the midst of it. Maybe quiet walking, but at the moment that there is this, what is it, way of being, the capturing the whole thing as it is functioning right now. Even in walking, there may be a stopping and not moving to listen so quietly, so undefendedly, and non-protectively to what's unfolding or operating, whatever. By unconditionally, we mean not placing any condition upon this way of being. Then it becomes a method. But something is there haunting us and has haunted us for 20, 30, 40, 50 or 60 years, and looking backward at the history of humankind, for thousands of years, human beings have been in fear. And acting out of that fear and not really aware of it, not in touch with it, and therefore doing all the stupendous things that we do. Horrible things of acting out of fear. Dangerous, divisive, isolating, violent, to get some feeling of refuge, some feeling of comfort. Somebody mentioned in a meeting, I don't even want to occupy myself with distant, big fears, fear of death. I just want to be with what's here right now, nearest. if that state is there, fear, or whatever it is that we call fear, does not sustain itself in the absence of thoughts feeding it or actions taken against it. The body which produces these feelings that we call fear and anguish restores itself to a state of balance. Because the body responds to signals of thought, memory. And if those are not coming in, then there's no more need for setting glands, muscles, and organs into motion for flight or attack or freezing. These are the three protective mechanisms of the organism, not just the human organism. We have inherited that from our animal ancestors. But one can say, and we talk about this in meetings, people bring it up, all right, so the fear dissipates, but it comes back. What about that? What comes back? What triggers fear? There's one thing what we just went into and went through as being completely with it. But what brings it about in the first place? And is that running inexorably the next thought and the same thing again? Coming to calm and balance and the thought and again and again and again. Are we doomed to this kind of everlasting cycle of frightening thoughts, body in uproar, coming to quiet, and again a frightening thought? And there's no one here or on this whole earth who doesn't have frightening thoughts, because we have all gone through tremendously frightening experiences, particularly as small children, babies, small children, infants, toddlers. At a time where we were totally helpless, totally dependent on an adult, an older person, a parent. And this very parent, who we were totally dependent upon, may have been the one who caused us to be afraid, be angry at us, hit us, scold us with a loud voice, punish us. So in every human being there's a tremendously powerful memory, repressed or semi-repressed, of situations, incidents, at which the feeling may have been, I may not survive this, I may die in this. Not that the child thinks necessarily in those words, but there may be organismic fear for surviving, which is what kicks in all of these physical symptoms, physical manifestations to help in surviving. So we all carry, without exception, memories of great danger, great fear, great pain suffered. Mental, psychological, physical. Which can come up at any time through association with something that reminds one of it. Who knows how these thoughts arise, but they do. Sometimes people say, will there ever be a time when there isn't this arising of fear at a fearful thought? One doesn't have to go through this time and time again. Find out. Find out. We want to predict ourselves a safe future and do things to bring about the safe future. But the future is not safe. It isn't. Even leaving alone all our past memories, there can be an earthquake. Or if one is in the Navy, I don't know if you've followed the news for a brief period when I was back from no news watching to a few days of news watching at home. Every day, in the course of 6 days, the Navy, which is one of our strong protective services, bombed itself or did something to itself, and people were dying. It's just the most amazing thing. Negligence or misfunctioning. So here you are in this marvelous swimming fortress. One of your own fighter planes drops a bomb on you. I don't know if anybody died in that particular case. Where are we going to be safe? We don't know. It was brought up, we discussed it. Fear of flying in an airplane. Who knows what will happen? I used to be really scared of flying in airplanes. Why? Because I knew about all the things that could happen. And I thought of them when I got a little bumpy. This time in Frankfurt, getting on the airplane, you start out like normally. Of course, you've already gone through all kinds of being buzzed with apparatus to see whether there's anything on you. But then you don't just proceed through that covered corridor to the plane. You go back down to the airport and pick out your baggage. Because only if you pick out your baggage will it go on to the airplane. Because a few baggages were left behind. And of course a few people didn't find their baggage, it wasn't there. So will you now keep thinking about clever ways in which somebody smuggled on a plastic device anyways? Because the clever we are in detecting, the cleverer we get in circumventing detection. And in discussing this fear on an airplane, I sort of surveyed my past history on it and realized that today, flying normally, I've never flown with somebody brandishing a weapon and kidnapping or whatever. I don't know how I would respond then. I'd have to see. But under normal circumstances, even with some bumpiness, there's no fear. Is it that the thoughts just don't come up anymore? They're not repressed. They're there, but they're not running their course, and therefore the body remains calm. I even experimented with it, thinking, well, what if the side of the plane flew out on my seat? With seat belts on safely. Wonder whether the oxygen mask comes with you. You have the flotation under you. How would it be? Well, you don't know. You would be there. But it didn't become an anxiety event. And I think this is not just, the thoughts were there that this could happen, but they didn't have their usual frightening effect. If I think about, maybe I said something wrong, I can have a punch into the solar plexus very quickly, instantly. I may have said something wrong. But dying in an airplane, it didn't have that effect anymore. And in looking at it, and we looked at it together, several people, I'm not afraid of dying anymore. Really, I'm not. I can't say why not, but I'm not. That thought is not a frightening thought. It's so clear that we'll all die at one point or another. And how will one meet it? How will one meet anything now? That's the question. And in the same way, can one meet death when it comes, when it happens, fully, unconditionally, without bracing or escaping, or wanting something else, or thinking of paradise, or fearing hell. So, in talking, if we want to talk and look at this thing, will one forever be moved and haunted and agonized, pained by frightening thoughts? One has to find out, but one has to investigate very broadly, not fragmentally, but broadly. What is one trying to protect? What one is one afraid of? Fundamentally, not just the part, the fragment of becoming sick or losing a job, not having enough money, poverty. Didn't mention this. This is quite often mentioned, not in this retreat. Afraid of being poor in old age. So, how broadly will one question and go into a question? About what this is that one is fearing for. The self, the me, the I, my life. And to investigate that thoroughly, what this is, this I, this me, which we often have called the capsule living in a capsule. In the capsule there can be a lot of money and position and sort of pseudo-security. House and family who at this moment is together. But things even in this tiny capsule, which we try to make so secure as we can, in this tiny capsule things change all the time. And what was secure today is gone tomorrow. The friend, the husband, wife, or who one depended upon is gone or died. Once things I just heard in a letter, one of the people who comes to retreat in California, living in this epicenter of the earthquake, her total household was smashed. Everything gone. From within 15 seconds. So, will we try to make secure and establish ourselves, dispose ourselves in this capsule? Or can there be a vast, broad way of looking at life and oneself? And all humanity? What are we clinging to? Why? What are we afraid of ultimately? For whom? What has the mind built up over centuries and millennia in terms of this me, my, mine, my friends, my group, my family, my village, my county, my tribe, my country, my religion, my religious community? We have built this up out of fear. But does it protect us? We're still afraid after millennia of building refuges and secure things like navies with a flag flying, stars and stripes in this case. What's the security in it? The things which we have built up through thinking, through imagining, and then having the hands to build it, haven't given us security. They've brought us a lot of division and conflict and problems, unending problems. And in talking about this, examining in an unprepared way, I'm thinking out loud and looking, and whoever is sharing in this, we're together in this. I'm not advocating anything. Sometimes people say, you seem to be advocating this or that. I'm not, I'm looking. Because I found out that in seeing something very clearly from no vantage point of me, just looking at it clearly, there comes a great sense of freedom, deliverance, if you will, from the very fact that is looked at clearly, truthfully, as far as is possible. Sometimes one can't see all the facts. They're not all there to be seen. Then one can see that clearly too, and hold judgment or conclusion in abeyance. Never needs to conclude anyways, because things change so quickly. But really coming upon the truth of something, of this feeling of fear right now. If it's there, it's not there. But if it's there, being with the truthful events that are taking place in this body right now, without bracing against them, without condemning them or wanting something better, no division, no escape. In that there is a liberation. From what? From fear. Because we can meet things immediately, anytime. No matter how stupid one was or stupefied in bringing it about. Here we can meet it. And if it's a problem between you and me, we can meet it together if we're both into meeting it unconditionally. Not from your vantage point and mine, then we can't meet. And it's always your vantage point versus mine. We can talk for hours and days, but we won't meet. To dialogue, to discuss, we have to drop our position and look at something undefended, unprotected. And then we can be of immense help to each other, pointing things out. And seeing something together. But one can also see something alone. One doesn't need to have someone else. Although it can be very helpful. There's something helpful in dialoguing, looking together. There seems to be an energy of looking together, which may be lacking if one sits by oneself. Maybe, not necessarily. And coming upon the truth of something is freeing. Why? I don't know. It is. There's a freeing, and there's a joy in discovering what is so, what is really so. Whether it's painful or whatever, it doesn't matter. It's coming upon the truth of it without withdrawal or mechanisms to deal with it. Sort of having tongs in one's hands rather than feeling with one's fingers. And if the question comes up, yeah, but how am I going to do this? That's the wrong question. Fear is there, isn't it? We're talking about fear today. Tomorrow maybe anger or whatever. It's there. Almost in its there-ness, it's beckoning to be seen. And when there's some awareness, the mind, when there's energy in looking, listening, then the connection between a thought and this thing hitting one, the fright and fear of freezing, that connection can be very clearly seen. A fleeting thought or memory. And what is the thought about? It's about me. Invariably. Me or mine. What will happen or could happen, might have happened or has happened to me and mine. What did I do wrong or I have done something wrong? Which also comes out of this self-center, this capsule. It's a capsule thought, and a capsule guilt, and a capsule pain, which keeps the capsule, it reinforces it. Guilt has never brought freedom. Guilt encapsulates in maybe doing penitence and or whatever, but that's not freedom. One has to understand guilt and follow it, be with it, understand it as it unfolds, as it acts, as it is triggered, and what it does to the senses, to the mind, to the body. And that awareness that sheds light on guilt or fear, anguish. That is not of it, that is not of guilt, it's not of fear and anguish. It's of nothing. It is of nothing and it is without cause. So one can't technique it. That it happens at all is utterly marvelous, miraculous. An awareness without division. Without self. and yet shedding clear light upon all the trials and tribulations of self in its capsule. We will end here for today.